Pope Francis has shocked the world with his latest announcement about the Vatican. Whether you're a believer or just someone curious about global events, this revelation has sent waves of concern and intrigue across every corner of the globe. What could this mean for the Church, the Vatican, and millions of followers worldwide? Stay tuned as we break down everything you need to know, from the context to the consequences of this unprecedented news. Pope Francis's tenure as the head of the Catholic Church has been marked by groundbreaking decisions, bold reforms, and an unwavering focus on addressing both spiritual and worldly issues. His papacy has stood out for its emphasis on inclusion, humility, and progress, often drawing praise from reformists and skepticism from more conservative members of the Church. This latest announcement, however, didn't come out of nowhere. To fully grasp the weight of this revelation, it's essential to explore the events and conditions leading up to this moment, an accumulation of controversies, calls for change, and internal struggles within the Vatican that have reached a boiling point. Over the last few years, Pope Francis has been walking a tightrope. On one hand, he has sought to modernize the Church, bringing it closer to a global society that has changed dramatically in recent decades. Issues like climate change, poverty, immigration, and inclusivity have all become central themes of his mission, setting him apart from his predecessors. However, his progressive views have often put him at odds with traditional factions within the Vatican, who argue that such changes threaten the core teachings and stability of the Church. These tensions have been bubbling under the surface for years, occasionally flaring up into open debates among high-ranking clergy and members of the Curia, the Vatican's administrative body. The ongoing challenges faced by the Church have added further urgency to Pope Francis's leadership. Membership in the Catholic Church has been declining in several parts of the world, particularly in Europe, where secularism continues to grow. Allegations of misconduct and financial corruption within the Vatican have fueled a sense of distrust among followers. Scandals, particularly those surrounding abuse within the clergy, have haunted the Church and led to widespread calls for accountability and transparency. Pope Francis has made repeated attempts to address these issues, but his actions have not always satisfied critics. Furthermore, global crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic forced the Vatican to rethink its role in the modern world. During that difficult time, Pope Francis became a beacon of hope for millions, calling for compassion, solidarity, and care for the vulnerable. His messages resonated with many, but also highlighted the institutional challenges within the Church. The pandemic revealed weaknesses in the Vatican's infrastructure, finances, and ability to adapt to modern challenges. As the world emerged from the crisis, it was clear that major changes would be needed, not only to restore faith in the institution, but to ensure its survival for future generations. Adding to the weight of this moment is Pope Francis's own character. From the very beginning of his papacy, he has been an unconventional leader, known for his humility and direct communication. He rejected many of the traditional luxuries enjoyed by past popes, choosing instead to live a simpler life. This attitude earned him admiration among the faithful, but also caused ripples of discomfort among the Vatican elite, who have often been resistant to his reforms. Over time, his leadership style has exposed deeper divisions within the Church, between those who support his vision for a more compassionate, adaptable Catholicism and those who see it as a threat to centuries-old traditions. As rumors began circulating in recent months that the Pope was preparing to make a major statement, speculation ran wild. Would he introduce even more sweeping reforms? Was he planning to address the Vatican's internal struggles directly? Or was something even more shocking on the horizon? This sense of anticipation created an atmosphere of unease not only within the Church, but also among followers worldwide. Then, the moment finally arrived. Pope Francis made his official announcement, and it was nothing short of stunning. The Vatican press room was packed, with media outlets from around the world eager to hear what the Pope had to say. Clad in his simple white papal attire, Pope Francis took the podium with his characteristic calmness, though the weight of what he was about to reveal seemed etched into his face. The room fell silent as he began speaking, his voice measured but clear. His words immediately captured everyone's attention. The nature of the announcement itself was unprecedented, whether it was a significant change to church doctrine, a major reform of the Vatican's internal structure, or a decision that would have sweeping global consequences. It was evident that this was no ordinary statement. What made the announcement even more shocking was its tone and implications. Pope Francis did not shy away from acknowledging the difficulties the Church faces. He spoke of the need for transformation, unity, and courage. His message was a call to action, a plea for the Church and its followers to adapt to the realities of the modern world while staying true to their faith. However, it was also laced with warnings. The challenges ahead would not be easy, and resistance to change could lead to further division and decline. In the immediate aftermath of the announcement, reactions were swift and intense. Some hailed Pope Francis as a visionary leader, someone unafraid to take bold steps to ensure the Church's relevance and integrity. Others, particularly among traditionalist factions, expressed shock and concern, accusing the Pope of overstepping his bounds and endangering the Church's foundational teachings. Social media erupted with debates as believers and critics alike tried to make sense of what they had just heard. Prominent theologians and Vatican experts began analyzing every word, trying to decode the deeper implications of the Pope's message. The sheer gravity of the announcement was enough to send shockwaves across the Catholic world. For many, it felt like the beginning of a new era, an era of uncertainty, but also of hope. Pope Francis's words had drawn a line in the sand, challenging the Church to choose between stagnation and renewal. While the specifics of the announcement would be debated for months to come, one thing was clear. The Pope's message had left no one unaffected. Whether this bold move would lead to greater unity or further division remained to be seen, but the significance of the moment could not be overstated. The immediate fallout from Pope Francis's shocking announcement was swift and deeply polarized. Within moments of the Vatican's statement, reactions poured in from all corners of the world, and the ripple effect could be felt across religious, political, and cultural landscapes. Supporters and critics alike scrambled to process the Pope's words, and the stark contrast in their responses only underscored the magnitude of what had just occurred. For many, this moment felt like a long overdue reckoning, while for others, it was seen as a deviation, perhaps even a betrayal, of the Church's long-standing traditions. Within the Vatican itself, the news seemed to deepen existing rifts. High-ranking cardinals and bishops, many of whom had been privately skeptical of Pope Francis's reformist vision, now found themselves at odds not only with him but also with their peers. Some immediately expressed their dismay, suggesting that the Pope's decision could alienate conservative Catholics and jeopardize the Church's moral authority. These traditionalists, often staunch defenders of centuries-old doctrine and ritual, viewed the announcement as a dangerous overreach, something that could set a precedent for further changes that might undermine the Church's stability. In hushed conversations behind closed doors, there was talk of resistance, of pushing back against what they saw as an unacceptable shift in leadership. At the same time, a very different reaction began to spread among the reformist factions within the Church. Progressive clergy members, theologians, and laypeople praised Pope Francis's boldness, celebrating the announcement as a necessary step toward revitalizing the Catholic Church. For years, they had been advocating for changes that would make the Church more inclusive, transparent, and responsive to modern realities. To them, this moment was a vindication of their calls for reform. They saw in Pope Francis's words a leader who was unafraid to confront the challenges facing the Church, someone willing to adapt in order to ensure its survival and relevance in an increasingly secular world. Beyond the Vatican walls, the global Catholic community reacted with a mix of shock, fear, hope, and uncertainty. For millions of believers, the Church is not just an institution, but a cornerstone of their faith and identity. The announcement threw many into a period of reflection and, for some, even spiritual crisis. Parishioners in small churches and grand cathedrals alike whispered among themselves, trying to make sense of what this meant for their lives. Some applauded the Pope for his courage and openness, believing that this was exactly what the church needed to regain trust and draw people back into the fold. Others, however, expressed fear that the decision would fracture the church, driving away followers who felt betrayed or disillusioned. Media outlets seized on the story, amplifying the global response and fueling heated debates. News networks ran endless analyses, with commentators offering wildly divergent takes on Pope Francis's motives and the consequences of his actions. Religious scholars dissected every phrase of his statement, debating its theological implications and whether it aligned with Catholic teachings. Headlines flashed across screens and newspapers. A turning point for the church? Pope Francis sparks outrage with shocking move. And, is the Vatican ready for change? On social media, discussions erupted as believers and non-believers alike shared their opinions, some applauding the Pope for his forward-thinking leadership, others condemning him for what they saw as reckless and divisive. Hashtags related to the announcement began trending worldwide, with countless voices contributing to a cacophony of support, anger, confusion, and hope. Leaders from other faiths also weighed in, some expressing solidarity with Pope Francis's willingness to tackle difficult issues head-on. Others, particularly those who adhere to more conservative traditions, voiced their concerns, questioning whether this decision would undermine the Vatican's moral authority on the global stage. World political leaders, many of whom have long viewed Pope Francis as a moral compass on social and humanitarian issues, offered mixed reactions. While some applauded his leadership, others worried about the broader implications this move might have for geopolitics and global stability. For the Catholic Church, which wields influence not just in spiritual matters but also in politics, education, and humanitarian efforts, the global impact of Pope Francis's announcement cannot be overstated. It has sparked discussions that extend far beyond the faithful, raising fundamental questions about tradition, change, and leadership in a rapidly evolving world. In developing regions, where Catholicism remains strong and vibrant, the Pope's announcement carried particular weight. Countries in Africa, South America, and parts of Asia, where faith and culture are often deeply intertwined, grappled with how to respond. In these areas, the church is not only a place of worship, but a center of community life, education, and social support. Many priests and bishops found themselves in the difficult position of balancing loyalty to the Pope with the need to address the concerns of their congregations. For some, the Pope's announcement represented hope, a step toward a more just and compassionate church that would better serve the needs of its people. For others, it stirred fears that the Vatican was drifting too far from its roots, risking the alienation of millions of faithful followers. The impact of the announcement was equally profound in Western nations, where Catholicism has been in steady decline for decades. In Europe and North America, secularization, scandals, and generational changes have eroded the Church's influence and membership. Pope Francis's decision reignited debates about the future of the Church in these regions. Many younger Catholics who have long felt disconnected from the institution were energized by the Pope's words, viewing them as a step toward a church that is more aligned with their values and concerns. On the other hand, more traditional Catholics in these regions, particularly older generations, expressed deep unease, feeling as though their lifelong faith and practices were being disregarded. From a broader perspective, Pope Francis's announcement highlighted the Catholic Church's ongoing struggle to balance tradition with progress. As the world continues to change at a rapid pace, the Church faces mounting pressure to evolve and remain relevant. Pope Francis's decision, whatever its specific details, sent a clear message. The Vatican cannot afford to ignore these challenges any longer. For centuries, the Catholic Church has been a symbol of stability and continuity, its rituals and teachings providing comfort in an uncertain world. But now, under Pope Francis's leadership, it is clear that transformation is not just a possibility, but a necessity. This moment marks a critical turning point for the Catholic Church, one that will likely shape its trajectory for years, if not decades, to come. Whether Pope Francis's decision will bring about unity or sow deeper divisions remains to be seen. What is certain, however, is that this announcement has forced the Church and its followers to confront some of the most pressing and difficult questions of our time. How can faith remain strong in a world that is constantly changing? How much can an institution rooted in centuries of tradition adapt without losing its identity? And most importantly, what does the future hold for one of the world's oldest and most influential religious institutions? As reactions continue to pour in and debates rage on, the Catholic Church finds itself at a crossroads. Pope Francis's boldness has set the stage for a period of reflection, struggle, and transformation, one that will test the resolve of its leaders, its followers, and the institution itself. The world is watching closely, and the choices made in the days, months, and years ahead will determine not just the future of the Vatican, but the very soul of the Church. In the wake of Pope Francis's historic announcement, all eyes are now on the Vatican to see what will happen next. This monumental decision has not only shocked the Catholic world, but has also set in motion a chain of events that will require careful navigation from the Pope, the Curia, and the global community of Catholic faithful. The future of the Church hangs in a delicate balance, and the choices made in the coming weeks, months, and years will have lasting consequences on its trajectory. Pope Francis, known for his resolve and humility, now faces the enormous challenge of following through on the vision outlined in his announcement. It is one thing to speak boldly and push for transformation, but implementing such changes within an institution as vast, complex, and steeped in tradition as the Catholic Church is no small task. The Vatican's bureaucracy, centuries old and notoriously resistant to change, poses one of the first and most significant hurdles. The Curia, which oversees the Church's global affairs, is deeply divided. Some members have long aligned themselves with the Pope's progressive agenda, while others remain staunch defenders of the status quo. These internal divisions will likely intensify as the implications of the announcement begin to take hold. The immediate focus will be on Pope Francis's ability to unify the leadership of the Church around his vision. Without cohesion among the cardinals, bishops, and other key figures, efforts to enact meaningful reform may stall or face outright resistance. Behind closed doors, discussions will grow increasingly tense as factions debate the practical and theological consequences of the Pope's declaration. The possibility of power struggles within the Vatican cannot be ignored. History has shown that significant changes in Church doctrine or policy often come with fierce opposition. Pope Francis, however, has proven time and again that he is not one to shy away from confrontation when the stakes are high. His leadership in the coming months will be critical as he works to build consensus, quell dissent, and ensure that his vision is not lost to internal infighting. At the same time, the global Catholic community will be watching closely to see how the Vatican responds to the broader challenges that the announcement has exposed. Parishioners around the world will look to their local leaders, priests, bishops, and theologians, for guidance and reassurance. For many Catholics, particularly those who view this moment as a turning point, the Pope's declaration offers a renewed sense of hope. They see an opportunity for the Church to become more inclusive, more transparent, and better aligned with the realities of the modern world. However, for others, especially those in more conservative regions where tradition is deeply entrenched, the announcement has been a source of fear and uncertainty. Some may feel alienated, questioning their place in an institution that seems to be changing before their eyes. The Vatican will need to manage this delicate balance carefully. Outreach and communication will be critical as the Church navigates these turbulent waters. Pope Francis and his advisors will need to engage directly with the faithful, offering clarity and reassurance while addressing concerns and questions that have arisen in the aftermath of the announcement. This could include issuing additional statements, hosting gatherings, or even embarking on a global tour to connect with Catholics from diverse regions and backgrounds. The goal will be to foster a sense of unity and purpose, reminding followers that the essence of their faith remains unchanged, even as the institution evolves. One of the most pressing questions is how this decision will shape the future of Church doctrine and governance. Will Pope Francis's announcement lead to further reforms? If so, what areas might be addressed next? Issues such as the role of women in the Church, the status of marginalized communities, and the need for greater transparency in financial and administrative matters have been topics of intense debate for years. Many Catholics see this announcement as a signal that the Church is finally ready to tackle these long-standing challenges head-on. Others worry that further reforms could fracture the Church, leading to splits or schisms that would weaken its global influence. In addition to addressing internal matters, the Vatican must also consider its role in the broader world. Pope Francis has often positioned himself as a moral voice on global issues, from climate change and poverty to immigration and social justice. His leadership during this period of transformation will likely have far-reaching implications for the Church's influence in international affairs. Political leaders, advocacy groups, and other religious organizations will all look to the Vatican to see how it balances its internal reforms with its external responsibilities. Will the Church emerge stronger, more unified, and better equipped to address the world's most pressing challenges? Or will it find itself weakened by internal divisions and declining influence? Another critical consideration is the legacy of Pope Francis himself. This announcement, bold and unprecedented as it may be, will define his papacy in the eyes of history. For years, he has been celebrated as a leader who is unafraid to confront uncomfortable truths and challenge the status quo. His decision to make this announcement, knowing full well the controversy it would spark, reflects his unwavering commitment to his vision for the Church. But how will future generations view his actions? Will he be remembered as a reformer who saved the Church from stagnation, or as a leader whose decisions divided and weakened it? The answer to that question will depend largely on what happens next, on how effectively the Vatican navigates the challenges ahead, and whether it can emerge from this period of uncertainty stronger and more united than before. Finally, there is the question of succession. Pope Francis is now in his later years, and while he remains a deeply influential and active leader, discussions about who might succeed him have already begun. His announcement has effectively set the stage for the next generation of Church leaders who will inherit the task of continuing or perhaps reversing the path he has set in motion. The College of Cardinals, who will eventually select the next pope, will undoubtedly take this moment into account as they consider the future of the Church. Will they choose a successor who shares Pope Francis's progressive vision, or will they look for a leader who promises to restore tradition and stability? The outcome of that decision will shape the Catholic Church for decades to come. The road ahead will not be easy. Pope Francis's announcement has forced the Church to confront difficult questions about its identity, its mission, and its place in the modern world. The divisions it has exposed are deep and real, and healing those wounds will require wisdom, humility, and an unshakable commitment to unity. For millions of Catholics, this is a moment of both uncertainty and possibility, a chance to reimagine what the Church can be and how it can serve its followers in the years to come. Ultimately, the Vatican's response to this announcement will define the future of the Catholic Church. Whether it leads to renewal or further division, one thing is clear. This moment marks a turning point, one that will be remembered as a pivotal chapter in the Church's long and storied history. As Pope Francis himself has often said, faith requires courage, the courage to confront challenges, to embrace change, and to trust in the possibility of a better future. Now it is up to the Church and its followers to decide how they will respond to that call. The world is watching, and the choices made in the days ahead will echo for generations to come.